This is Myriacast episode 7. Today I am joined by my co-host Spoon. Spoon, say hello.
Good evening, everybody.
And we are joined once again by another guest. We have our friend Blue Infinity with us today. Uh, Blue, I personally have known for a few years now. Really good guy. And for our topic today, which is speedrunning, we felt he was a great person to bring on to this particular podcast episode. So, Blue, why don't you say hello? And why don't you go ahead and just give a really short intro just on you, and then I'll get into the rest of the intro for this episode.
Sure. Blue Infinity 22. It's my second time on the Myria cast. Ironically, for speedrunning again. I've been speedrunning for about, say, 5 years. Absolutely enjoy the hobby, the community, and it's been a lot of fun just growing and seeing it grow over time.
Great. So let's do the intro really quickly here, and then we'll get right into our agenda. So Myriacast is part of Myriathon. Myriathon is a biannual charity gaming marathon. We focus primarily on gaming, various different types of games. I think we're going to be focusing a bit more on RPGs in the ongoing future endeavors. Our next Myriathon, I just want to give a quick update on this. We're not 100% sure what's going to happen, just because of everything that's going on in real life currently with COVID-19. So it was scheduled for June 11th to 14th. We're kind of shifting gears on that and thinking of doing something more along the lines of a online type of marathon. More will come on that hopefully next week for next week's episode. But just thought for anybody that was interested in following along on that I should briefly give an update for what's going on, particularly with everything that's happening in the outside world here. And just to quickly talk about the Myriacast socials here, you can follow the Myriathon's Twitter, the YouTube, which is shown on here. I also want to give a quick update on that. The reason why we ask people to do the search, the space Myriathon, is because this is kind of important. You need, because I was doing research on this, about 100 subscribers according to YouTube, among other things, to get a custom domain URL. So right now, we're not close to that at all. So that's kind of the reason why we've been asking people to do the custom search, is because we're not at a point where you can actually get that custom domain name. So the more subscribers we get as we build towards that goal, again, it seems pretty small when you put it in context of everybody, all the bigger people, but getting that custom domain would be a really big deal and make things easier for people who are in fact searching and trying to find these VODs on YouTube. You can follow our Twitch. We're also on Mixer for the first time today for this episode. So if you're interested in that and supporting us there as well, or you're watching on there, the Mixer is mixer.com/the Myriathon, same as on Twitch. And we also have our audio on anchor.fm as well as SoundCloud. I put the SoundCloud ones on my personal SoundCloud for now. And the Anchor podcast will go out to like Spotify and iTunes and such. So if you could support us on any of those, if you're interested at all in watching, listening after the fact, we would really appreciate it. All these things are extremely helpful in trying to not just facilitate further episodes, but really trying to build the audience, which is obviously our goal. So now that all that's out of the way, quickly just to talk about extra Myriacast stuff, like if you follow myself on Twitter, Automaton89, a bunch of the Myriathon like polls and updates will come from my Twitter as well. And then there's other stuff that happens. Spoon, why don't you quickly talk about your Twitter stuff for Myriacast updates, because you do post on there as well.
Yep, my Twitter is at SBTspoon, and I generally pretty much always like retweet Otto's tweets so that people who follow me will see the Myriacast tweets, and also occasionally I'll post stuff on my own. I usually do like the tweets that I send the tweets out like right before the episode starts. just for the quick last second reminder for people who may have missed it
Sure.
previously. So.
Right.
Yep, follow me or Otto on Twitter, and you will likely see all of the Myriacast updates, and also there's the Myriathon on Twitter as well, which also will generally retweet, like and retweet all that stuff as well. But we personally don't have control of those accounts, or that
Yeah.
account, I should say.
Yeah. I don't typically go on that account unless something specific. I'm doing something specific. But anyway, now let's move on from the intros. We'll talk a bit more about our personal socials and stuff later near the end. Let's just jump right into the topic now that I've gotten all that introduction out of the way and updates. So like I said, today's episode focuses on speedrunning, which I guess is a pretty specific, it is a specific topic in the grand scheme of things, but there's a lot under that umbrella that I think Blue and Spoon here will be able to unpackage. So I would say let's just start with the most general term, speedrunning term, and just you guys, obviously I'll touch on this as well, but I'm not as ingrained into this topic as you both are. If you could just briefly go over from your own experiences, not just about the topic, but maybe how you got introduced to it, both of you. I think that's a great starting point for this conversation.
Blue, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So speedrunning, I guess in its simplest thing is just kind of like a self-imposed challenge for completing a game or some sort of challenge in a video game, as fast as possible, using usually whatever methods are available to you. For me, the way that I got into speedrunning was just from watching on YouTube Mario 64 speedruns and just seeing how fast that people could complete that game. That was my first exposure to it, and it was really exciting to see, just like seeing a game that you played casually and you thought you were pretty good at, and just seeing what somebody who spent a lot of time and perfecting all the mechanics in the game and completing it as fast as possible. And so that kind of got me starting to do that, because I think everybody kind of has done speedrunning themselves, whether they're aware of it or not, where they replay their favorite game and see what they can do in the second playthrough or complete it as fast as they can. And so it's kind of seeing it in like its extreme is like really exciting. And so that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, I got introduced to speedrunning, I think initially, I want to say in 2014 or 2015, when I saw my brother watching GDQ over a winter break, I think. And yeah, I saw it. I thought it was pretty cool. And I eventually decided to pick it up myself and try it out. My first speed game was Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix on the PlayStation 3, which is the for everyone in the community knows, is the absolute slowest version of that game you could ever play. But yeah, I mean, I got into it that way. I think it's really fun. As Blue said, it's fun, it's challenging, it's a way to re-experience your favorite games again and again and again, making, I guess it's not new every time, but it's a way to, I feel like, continue playing your favorite game or games like over and over again without getting bored, because it's a constant challenge of trying to improve your PB and get better and better at the game.
So Spoon, just to put something in context here, and Blue, obviously you can touch on this as well. Can you, before I go any further, the KH2 Final Mix on PS3, how long was that run for you?
My first run was 5 hours and 45 minutes.
And Blue, what is your longest run of a game that you've, done a speed run for? What's the longest time to finish?
I did Dr. Mario on the Wii, level 0 to level 99, and it took me, I think, 11 hours.
Okay. So yeah, just for people again who aren't necessarily familiar with the topic, and for those of you who are familiar, obviously there's probably different stories of runs that are extremely long. Like it's not like you're playing a game for 30 minutes and that's the run. Obviously there are games like that, but there's some, like in Spoon's case and in that Dr. Mario case, like you're sitting down for 5 hours plus, and you're just you obviously you can take some breaks here and there, because I know the watching you Spoon, the KH2 final mix, like sometimes the gummy missions in particular, right, are your break time, so to
Yeah,
speak. It's like, okay,
it
I get
really
to
depends on the run. There are
right.
some even longer runs I'm pretty sure that have 0 or next to 0 like breaks, and you kind of have to just be prepared for that, I
Exactly.
guess.
So I kind of wanted to put that out there because, like, for me, I've only done a speedrun for one game. One game, officially speaking. I did one for Super Mario Odyssey, and that was about an hour and 25 minutes or something like that. Never actually put it up anywhere, but I remember it was about 125, 1 hour and 25 minutes. And, that's like, for me, every time like I would watch Spoon do a speed run in particular, like all I could think of was like, okay, I don't know if I want to sit down for 5 hours and do a run. So I can like see how somebody from the outside can have this idea of, okay, this seems pretty intimidating. Um,
There are so for me, I really like RPG speedruns, and those are
mhm,
the ones that tend to be a lot longer. But there are plenty of speedruns that are like less than an hour, less than 30 minutes, less than
mhm,
10 minutes. Like
right.
there are plenty of like very, very short speedruns. If you're intimidated by the length of like RPG speedruns, then don't fret. There are plenty of shorter speedruns than
Sure.
RPGs. But again, RPGs tend to be long games with like you have to go through a lot of like plot things, and like
Hmm.
I also feel like RPG. Well, I don't know if I want to say this, but I feel like RPGs, at least the ones I played, generally are like less glitchy. I guess like it's harder to skip large chunks of the game. At least in the ones I guess in older school ones that's not true, but
Hmm.
because a lot of times like RPGs just have like the way the game is designed, they have like specific like plot triggers that you just have to hit to progress the game, and if you don't hit it, like you can't go any further
Hmm.
basically. So it's hard to like skip huge chunks of the game.
Well, let's sort of like talk. So, Spoon, you did mention that you have done a lot of RPGs. Blue, obviously, I don't know if you mentioned any of the ones you were speedrunning besides the Dr. Mario example, obviously, but what are some other games that you've like we'll say completed a run for?
I really enjoy speedrunning like a variety of things. Like I've done things as simple as like time trials on Mario Kart, for example,
Hmm.
because that is speedrunning. The very first one I ever did was actually Pac-Man DX, and then but the main ones that I focus on are typically like the Zelda series, like Minish Cap is one of my favorites. Zelda 2 for the NES is one of my favorites. I did New Super Mario Brothers Wii U for a while. That one
Hmm.
was a lot of fun. Very technical, and you have to really learn how big each enemy is, the layouts of all the stages, so that you can perfect efficiency for getting through the stage, your power ups. So it's a lot of fun just trying out the different genres because like there's as many speedruns out there as there are people almost with like how unique you can make the challenges that you put on yourself. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So let's. So like I already mentioned that my one game that I've done a speedrun for, and I'm very happy that I've completed my one. I don't know if I'll ever dive back into it, but and I will also admit I don't think Guru's here. I did do some races, and we can talk about that obviously in the future. I can confidently say I've never won a race. I feel like I've defeated myself every time, almost every time. So let's go actually into talking a bit about what, not just like what got you started, but what are the kinds of things that you did to get started. And like, obviously examples are going to be really good here. So I would say let's actually start with a Blue. So it doesn't matter what the game is, like talk about the approach that you're taking. You've got a game in mind. Now you want to get started. What are you doing?
So when I first started really wanting to like commit to trying out speedrunning, It was actually Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS. That was my first time attempting it, and one of the things that really got me into it was watching a lot of the streams after I started with YouTube looking at videos, and then I wanted to kind of see it live and kind of ask questions as well. And so like I noticed the timer live split that people were using, and so I just kind of downloaded that. I just turned on my 3DS and I just kind of started to try to mimic what I was seeing on the stream and like asking questions as I was getting started. And it was actually really like fun just hitting that split button
Mm-hmm.
for like segmenting the run itself. And so I would just watch streamers, and then just kind of just do it. And so like you'll kind of see what roadblocks you might hit as you're playing. You're trying to do a trick, or you're just trying to complete it as fast as possible. So like you can do it as simple as take out your phone and have a timer just run as you just play through the game as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Like the barrier is just so low. It's just turning on the game and just having the in-game timer run. That because Kingdom Hearts, I think it tells you your playtime at the end, your in-game time. So you could just start up a new file, just get to the end and see what your time is, and you can compare it with people.
Just to sort of add on to that, and then I want to obviously go to um like when with that just like going into it, are there, obviously you said there's times, there's the time split software for
Live split.
live split,
Live
thank you.
split.
Live split, thank you. What other things are you utilizing? So just to give an example, like you said you're watching streams, okay, so you're obviously watching somebody else go through the game.
Mhm.
Are you taking notes? Do you then refer back to these notes? What are you, or are you just like doing it live? You're just winging it?
Actually, I did actually have a when I was watching for that Link Between Worlds one, I did actually have a word pad open, and I was like kind of writing down like the directions that he went, because specifically with Link Between Worlds, it's a pretty open map. So seeing which direction that these top runners would go, it kind of helps direct you. And so like there's a lot of the most of my speedruns, I actually do have a document that I write down the route that I take through the game, and like what are specific key things that I need to see. Like, for example, with an RPG, you'll want to keep track of your experience. Make sure you hit a certain level at certain times,
Mm-hmm.
so you kind of mark down before you kind of commit it to memory. And another thing that I would use is I would actually download some software that would record video or footage. And so, like, if it's a PC game, I would use that. Or when I started, I actually hooked up a webcam to my laptop, and I would point it at the screen
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of capture it like that. And that would achieve two things. One is like it would keep a record of your run, and two, it would help you ask those questions to people. You kind of show them what you're doing, and kind of get a little bit of direction on some of the strategies and tricks that you're kind of getting hung up on.
Got it. Okay, Spoon, ball's in your court now. Can you sort of talk about some of the things that you did? You know, you can obviously, for KH in particular, I would guess, that's a 5 hour game. So talk a bit
Yeah.
about the things that you were doing beforehand. And I recall you like showing some of your note documents in the past, like, and sharing them out. So they're not small little documents.
Yeah. Okay. I'll talk about that part eventually. But so back when I started speedrunning in 2015 is when I decided to learn KH2. It was right after like the PS3 version of the game had come out just in like I believe the fall or winter of the previous year in 2014. So it had come out a few months previously, maybe 6 months at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And they did I believe at Awesome Games Done Quick AGDQ that year. They did a run of KH2 FM, the Japanese version on PS2 critical mode. So that kind of spurred me to want to run it. But anyways, as for how I learned it, I kind of did what Blue did. I didn't really watch streams actually. I went to like the leaderboards and I found the VODs of like some of the top runs, like the world record run and I watched the GDQ run quite a bit, even though I decided to run beginner mode and the GDQ run was critical, so the route is quite different. But
Mhm.
I was a noob; I didn't know that at the time. Um, so I kind of spliced together a bunch of different things, and I went through these videos and I made my own notes. Like as blue as I typed out like the route, like where you need to go. Thankfully, KH2 is a um pretty linear game. It's pretty easy to know where to go most of the time. You pretty much walk forward most of the time to get from where you want to go. But there are a lot of different strategies in that game for like fights, and obviously it being an RPG, the menus, knowing like what abilities to equip, as Blue said previously, like what level you need to be at certain spots, um, what equipment you need, so on and so forth, being an RPG. So yeah, I went through the game and I made notes for the route, and then I booted up my game and I started practicing and making saves throughout the game so I could practice the different fights and everything in like small, short segments.
Mhm.
So that was my basic strategy. Nowadays, I don't know if this is true for every speedrunning community, but I've definitely seen since speedrunning has become a much more, I guess, I don't know if it's more popular, but it's definitely like more well known now. But I think it has grown in popularity mostly because of like events like GDQ and the like.
Mhm.
But there are like most communities at this point, I feel like have like either like a tutorial video or series. They have notes that people have created, that so you don't have to make your own, and so on and so forth. I have like Discord servers for like, I feel like almost every game or at least every series has a Discord server, that you can go in and like ask questions to people if you want, if you know um, when you decide you want to run a particular game or a particular series. So I think nowadays it's a lot easier to get into. But
Yeah.
again, about 5 years ago when I started, I kind of had to figure it out on my own, so that was interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great tools. Like Discord's a good example of this, where communities can be more sharing. They can utilize more this like these tools to better distribute all these different, whether it's documents or notes, and then communicate with each other. It's such a great communication tool. Not that there aren't any others out there um, that you can use, but Discord seems to make things a lot nicer for these communities. So just
A lot of
I mean, I
developers
can,
have been kind of taking advantage of that too.
yeah, but yeah. I mean, like I think there's a lot of good that comes from it. Um, so
Also,
oh, go ahead.
sorry. Also, speedrun.com has become a hub for just about every speedrun community there is. So there is
Yeah.
a basically one website you can go to, and then you type the name of the game or the name of the series you're looking for, find it, and then in there, again, if it's a series, you can find the individual games within there, and all the times are listed for the different categories. And then there's a sidebar where you can go to like, there's like guides, resources, like notes, forum. There's all these different things you can get to. So speedrun.com is really nice. Back when I started speedrunning in 2015, KH was not on speedrun.com. They had their own like, they just had like a Google Doc basically that just had the times on it. It was pretty janky to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how it was.
Yep. So I want to move on a bit to talking about. So we did talk about like some of the techniques that you guys are using. We have this on our agenda here, and before I get to it, I do want to mention if anybody who's listening or watching, you know, has any like comments or questions. Sometimes we have like our pre-comment question channels in various different places like Discord and Twitter. Feel free to ask or let us know something that you're curious about or just want to like say. We do a pretty good job of kind of like interacting. But one of the things I wanted to get out there from our agenda is there's various different cultures in speedrunning. And I don't mean just like specific like different communities, but I think on a macro level as a whole, talk about some of the. Why don't we start like we'll go back and forth about positive and negative. I would say like cultures. I would say I don't know like what the perfect words are for this, but any stigmas that seem to like just come to you that you find, oh well, this always circulates in around like different communities and we don't like it, or just things like that. So I would say let's start with Spoon, and then Blue, you can talk a bit about it if there's anything that's either overlapping or different than what Spoon touched on. And like one thing, Spoon, that we talked about on our agenda that I could see about it is this world record culture. So why don't you talk a bit about that and other things that you're thinking of?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I put that on there because I think I don't really like world record culture. And what I mean by world record culture is that, say you're doing a speed run, you're streaming on Twitch, maybe you don't have too many viewers because you're just starting out or whatnot, or you post your PB on YouTube for documentation purposes, or because you're gonna use that as your VOD for speedrun.com, because I don't know if like many speedrun communities like require you to have a VOD, or all of them. Obviously, what am I talking about? All of them require that you have a VOD.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting mixed up. Some of them don't require you have a timer on your screen, which that has been.
We can talk about that later too.
We can get to that later. I'm like, oh, you speedrun a game. We don't need a VOD. Of course you need a VOD. That doesn't make any sense.
Like,
Yeah. I got mixed up. Anyways, but maybe you see a comment in chat or like a comment on your video on YouTube that's like, oh, is this world record? What's world record? Are you going for world? Like, I just feel like there's this like stigma and culture around speedrunning that like nothing matters except world record. And also when communities get into like debates about the leaderboards and like how they should be structured, and like whether we should ban like SS solid state drives, or use certain timing methods, this and that, it feels like it's all stemmed from like world record culture, because everyone like thinks they can get world record, wherein like, and yes, that's true, but I've seen like over my time in like speedrunning and the cage community, like there's only been like a couple of people who've had world record for the games. You really have to put in a lot of time to get world record. You really have to grind the game. So I don't think that should be everyone's primary concern. Like, I think at least it is competitive. It's a leaderboard, but I think in some cases people treat it too competitively, where it's like you should just be. It's a hobby. Like, you should just be doing this to have fun, enjoy it, improve your time. If you're not having fun anymore, don't do it anymore. And I've seen some debates really spiral out of control on this, and I think it's just a little bit over the top.
Now, I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate here, and I'm not doing it just to be, a jerk. You mentioned that it is just a hobby. Well, okay, I can get on board with that for sure. I'm on board with you. But what about the people that would say, wait, well, hold on, no, it isn't. My hobby potentially is almost my job, because when you look at streamers who are speedrunners, I won't say that all of them have this as a full-time job. Obviously, that's a bit ridiculous to say. But what about the ones that literally are doing it? They're streaming and they're speedrunning at the same time. Yes, the speedrunning is like, it can be contextualized as a hobby. Basketball can be as well. But what about the people that are grinding it as much? Would they say it's a hobby anymore, or does it become something more? And again, I'm not being devil's advocate for no reason here.
Yeah.
I think it's good to put that out there as well.
I think it depends on who you talk to.
Okay.
Again, some people are more competitive than others. We talked about this last week when we had the MOBA discussion. I'm not a super competitive person. I don't care about getting world record, and I'm just here to have fun. I play games to have fun. I stream to have fun. If I'm not having fun, I don't do it.
Okay.
I think there are some people who are very competitive and they want to get world record. They want to get the best time they possibly can. They want to beat everybody on the leaderboards. It's not just a hobby. And I think there are some people who would, even if they're full-time streamers and it is their job, they would still say speedrunning is just a hobby. I do it because it's, I guess, like, for streamers who are speedrunners, they probably do it because that's what gets the most viewership on their channel, because that's what they're known for.
Sure.
And that's a different topic entirely. That's like Twitch culture in general.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But if they're like, I still feel like if they weren't having fun with it, they should either switch games and speedrun something else, or maybe try some casual, like, on their stream. I don't know.
Yeah,
Again, that's just me. So I'm sure many people disagree with me on this, but that's me.
Okay. So Blue, do you want to overlap on that, or do you want to like bring up some different stuff?
With the world record culture, there's a couple things on there that can kind of stem from world record culture. Like, a lot of people can fall in the trap of basically world record holder is the authority on a game, or the one that basically represents the game. That can get kind of dangerous when it comes to oftentimes discussions for what should be a community discussion, that their word will hold a lot more weight than you probably should give it. It can also tend to, when it comes to speedrunners themselves, they can kind of get trapped by the mindset of you need to have world record or you're not seen as like somebody to keep track of. And so it can often cause, when those 2 points interlap, where one of them is they're seen as the authority, and the other one where they see their value as a streamer or speedrunner in whether or not they have the world record, it can often cause a bit of conflict. Like, there was one community that a faster version of the game was found, and so when they were having discussions about it, the world record holder wanted to ban that altogether because it would mean that they would lose their world record. And so it would often cause a lot of discussion and conflicts and arguments. And so, like, the world record culture mindset can often be very dangerous and toxic, and can often like either hurt or divide a community entirely. So it's something that needs to be like, and at least in Minish Cap, it also kind of hurts with a lot of people who are often grinding for things, and it just kind of wears on your mindset as well, because you're taking it way seriously. And so when you have your failure upon failure upon failure stacking up, and it kind of loses the fun of it, and it loses it kind of loses the hobby aspect, because now you're looking at it as something more than just a hobby. You're seeing it as almost like your self-worth. And so it's a very dangerous kind of hill to fall down on. So that's kind of what made me pick up some of the games that I started speedrunning, because in Zelda 2 I got into that world record mindset, and it was a very dangerous one where I would just make one little mistake, just a tiny mistake. Like, in most games you just brush it off, but I would hit that reset button and start a whole other run. And I would just keep doing that over and over, and I'd get frustrated and angry because I'm like, I know what it's supposed to look like. I know how this run's supposed to go, and I keep messing it up, and I'd get angry, and it was so unhealthy. And so, you just need to stop. You need to kind of switch games, or try something else, or maybe even step back, ask somebody else, like, I keep messing up at this part, and turn it into like more of a healthy kind of experience, where now you're talking with people, you're communicating, you're networking, because there's a whole community, like, as we say, because we've come a long way from just Skype groups and just
we have
emails or forums.
Technology has gotten better. Thank
goodness.
Yeah, actually, when I started speedrunning, and actually we should mention this, I actually met Blue through speedrunning. Like, we were both learning KH2 FM on PS3 at the same time. So yeah, that's how we met, and we started doing races with him and Dodge, who we had on the cast last
week. Yep.
And yeah, we started doing races, and yeah, we used to use Skype before Discord existed, I think, or maybe it existed and no one had heard of it yet, I think. And then I believe you were the one, Blue, who suggested we switch over to Discord. When you did that, I hadn't even heard of it. You were like, this is Discord. It's pretty cool. Skype is pretty trash, so we should probably switch to this.
Yeah. That was really cool.
I want to touch on something, and this is my perception of this, and obviously this is something I just noticed. And I don't know if there's a good way to say it, so I'm just going to say it. Speedrun rage is real. I do think that like speedrunners in particular get really angry when they mess up. I really want to hear from both of you guys because frankly I've seen some of it from Spoon and I've had it myself. Like I said, only speedrun one game, and I can definitely attest to getting really frustrated. Is there like a good way to avoid that in your guys' minds? Like, we've all had it. And if you haven't had it, and you're somebody saying like, "I've never," you're fooling yourself. Don't do it. You're fooling yourself.
Well, okay, for me, a way that you can kind of look at it is when it comes to speedrunning rage, it often comes from the competitive aspect.
Mhm.
So you're kind of getting too much into the competitive. So it's like when you're playing like a fighting game or you're playing a competitive sport and you're just losing over and over. It's almost like that. So you can kind of find yourself getting overly frustrated. But something that I found myself doing, like especially after that Zelda 2, when I was just getting so angry because I was getting real committed. I wanted to beat these people. I wanted to get better. I eventually started, instead of comparing myself to others, just compare myself to my previous best.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, like, you're racing, instead of like, you're like, okay, I'm going to be comparing myself to the literal best player of this game ever. Just compare it to, let me just, at least if I do better than my last run, if I, do even a second faster, I know that I see my improvement. And you can also do like little psychological things, like with that timer that keeps track of each segment. When you fall behind, it'll have the numbers be red. Change it to a different color. Change it to something like blue, or something to like light blue, dark blue, just any sort of purple. Just something that's not like a deep red that just kind of, you look at it and you're just like, it just shows like you're messing up.
Failure.
So, yeah.
Failure.
Yeah. It's like, nice job. Good job losing time, buddy.
Good job, idiot.
Yeah.
Uh,
Little things like that.
Spoon, anything to add on to that?
I wanna address the chat real quick. We have Star Candy Panic in the chat, says never tried to speedrun a game, never got mad / shrug. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
That's a good. You're making the right decision, I think.
You are able to control your emotions better than I, because let me tell you, even though, as I said, I'm not a super competitive person, when you're, especially in a longer run like an RPG like Kingdom Hearts, something like that, even on like the PS4 version, which is like around 3 hours as opposed to 5 hours, which was the PS3 version, you get to the last part of the game, like in that game, it's the world that never was, the final world. And obviously it's the end of the game, so generally it's the most challenging part of the game in an RPG. It's a huge like boss gauntlet. All the fights are like very technical and challenging, and if you make one mistake and you die, or you get in that game a DM, a desperation move, you're losing like 30 seconds to a minute on that. And like, you could be, whatever, 30 seconds ahead, you lose a minute, well, now you're behind, and it's really frustrating to go through a 3-hour run
Yeah.
and then lose it to one fight because you
Right.
made one mistake. So yeah, I mean, the frustration is there and it mounts, and I think part of it is like, definitely, as Blue said, like with your splits, either changing the color of the like when you lose time. And also another thing that I think I see people do is they'll turn off their comparisons. Like they won't.
Yeah.
They'll just like turn off their split comparisons, so they don't see like where they're at on their splits compared to their PB, which I think
timer
is also helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to get into, kind of on this topic, but also going back to what we talked about previously with like world record culture, is I'll talk about like reset culture, because
okay.
It makes a lot of sense for like shorter games, again, for less than an hour, less than 30 minutes, less than 10 minute, the shorter speed runs. But I found that like in my experience in KH2 mostly, and in some of the other games, like I generally like doing no reset runs. And if you're going for world record, that's not a thing. Like if you're actually like you're close and you're competing for world record, if you make big mistakes or even small mistakes, in some cases you should just too far behind, and etc. But especially when you're just starting out, it does not make sense to like So in Kingdom Hearts 2, the beginning of the run is what we call Roxas World. You play as Roxas as opposed to the main character of the game, Sora.
Mhm.
And there's kind of a meme in the community that like Roxas pants is are like made of lead, or they're full of bricks or stones, or like he drops like a rock. And early in that game we like to do air combos because it's faster than ground combos. That's just a little bit of context. But I see so many people, even with like mediocre to like not very good times in, and again, that's, I'm not trying to throw shade at people, that's like even me, like I have like a 305 in KH2 on PS4, and the world record right now I think just got sub 250. So like I used to think my time was pretty good, but in comparison to world record, I'm 15 minutes off it. My time's not very good. But like I think a 305 is a pretty respectable time in Kingdom Hearts 2. But anyways, I see a lot of people with even in times like around mine or worse than mine, they will just like continually reset at the beginning of the game. Like, oh, I lost a few seconds. Reset. And from my experience, when I do heavy resets, I just get more and more frustrated, and I just get tilted. And my runs, like my first run when I like maybe made a small mistake and then reset was ended up being like my best run at that point, because I just got more and more frustrated the more I reset. And I was just like, yeah, it's kind of a tilt factor for me, where I'm just like, I keep making mistakes, I keep getting more and more frustrated, I keep playing worse and worse, and it's a downward spiral. Again, it's similar to like MOBAs. If you like play a game and lose, and then like you play bad, you go on tilt, you go worse, and you keep losing and losing and losing and losing, and it is a downward spiral.
For sure.
You can almost compare reset culture to when you die at level 1 in like a MOBA and then say GG. Like you died at the very beginning and you just hit the reset button. You just quit.
Oh, I hate that. It happens way too often. I just want to quickly add in, I'm not a screamer when I get like upset. I don't really scream at people. I get like pretty passive aggressive because I'm from the Midwest. So when I was playing Odyssey, I raced Kuru. And I remember the one time I got like upset, and I just basically told him, okay, we have to reset. I'm at the dinosaur, I'm trying to put the hat on the dino, and I'm trying to hit this like trampoline basically. It's not working. Kuru, can you win? Can we reset? This is killing me right now. Just sometimes, like for me, it's good to just I think I said this yesterday or last week with MOBAs. Go take a walk. Go outside, right? Not right now, obviously. It's a little bit skeptical right now to do that, but a little bit sketchy. But like
I'll show you to stay here watching this.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just like, just get out of that like particular scenario. Like get away from the screen and go do something else that you genuinely enjoy, and then come back to it. I found that stepping away from something and coming back to it in various different crafts, whether it's like gaming or coding or something else, stepping away and coming back, I end up figuring out something new. And there's a lot of different examples of this. For coding, I spent a week and a half on a problem that tilted me through the roof, and I just was like, I can't do this anymore. I even told Spoon about it. I did the same thing today. Took 30 minutes. It happens. Just step away, come back. It'll get better. I can almost promise you that. You'll figure out something different, and it'll just you'll be like, why did I just do this to myself? I should have done this a long time ago.
Sorry, go ahead, Blue.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Blue.
And like a funny irony with like resetting early is that like at least with me with Ape Escape 3, which was one of the only games other than Zelda 2 that I reset so badly on, was that I was worried and angry when I would mess up like 5 minutes in, and like I would lose like 10 seconds because of a mistake. And then if you were to go to like 3 segments later, there's like 10 minutes I could save. So I'm sitting here resetting over a 10-second mistake when there's like 10 minutes later on that if I just did that correctly, because I died, so I had to reset the stage and I kept going. If I don't die there, I just saved 10 minutes. And so it's like I'm getting angry over this 10 seconds when if I had just kept going, I could have saved way more.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was kind of getting at when I was talking about like people resetting in Roxas World and KH2, for example. Again, it's the first 20 minutes of the game, between 15 and 20 minutes of the game on PS4. Like if you make a 10-second mistake, even a 30-second mistake here and there, if you look at your splits, again, if you have a middling time, even like a good time but not like perfect or amazing. It's like you probably have like other 30-second to minute mistakes further in the run that you can improve on, and even like possible gold splits here and there where, you know, maybe you don't have that much time to save, but then you gold it by like 10 seconds or something like that. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention is that this is something where Otto's talking about like stepping away and like kind of just taking a deep breath, get something to eat, we'll go outside, you know, just get away from it for a minute. This is something that happens in like casual games too. Say you get stuck on like a hard boss in whatever game you're playing. I don't, whatever it is, a hard stage, a hard boss, a hard whatever, and you just get stuck and you grind it for 2 or 3 hours and you can't beat it. Like I feel like a lot of the time I've had experiences where I do that and then like, all right, I'm out of time for the night, I gotta stop, and then I come back the next day and I beat it on like my first couple of tries, and I'm like, why couldn't I just done this yesterday? I spent like 3 hours on this crap. Like,
It's
are
like
you kidding me?
the one reliable thing in life. It's like the one thing you can trust in life is that you might be bad at it today, but I can almost guarantee that when you step away and come back to it, you'll just be way better, and you'll be like, why was I so bad before? Or like, why did I struggle before? It's just every single time it happens to me, and I just laugh every single time. I was telling my family today, I was like, oh, it only took 30 minutes. I was like, what was I thinking before? You feel stupid, but it's all for improvement, which I think is important. Let's move on to a bit about. I've got it on my agenda as rules and regulations for various different communities. You guys, I'm going to need you to put some context on that. Let's start with Spoon while the sun's beating in my eye.
I mean, it really depends on the community. I think there are always gonna be rules, like the most basic of which is like you start your timer at X when you click new game or whenever this happens, and you end your timer at Y when you beat the final boss or you grab the flag on the final stage or whatever it may be. So those are like the most basic rules that like any speedrun should have. And then there are, again, depending on the game, depending on the category, there can be other rules that like certain, you know, maybe in this game, emulators are banned. You can only play on, you know, the console, or I'm trying to think what else, you know. Maybe in certain categories, certain glitches are banned. And I guess another thing we should talk about in this sort of discussion about rules is that like speedruns have a lot of different categories. Basically, the most common category you'll see for just about any speedrun we just define as any %, which means beat the game as fast as possible, no holds barred, like really generally no other rules, no glitch banning, you can do whatever you want to beat the game as fast as possible. And then there are, again, a lot of games that have like categories like glitchless, or they may ban certain glitches. And like, again, for some games there's things like, so in Kingdom Hearts, for example, like in Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts 1, for example, you don't have to like go to all the Disney worlds all the times that you have to in order to actually like get to the last boss and beat the game. So we have categories like all worlds. So it's like, okay, so you still have to beat the game, but you have to do all the worlds, as opposed to the any % where you can skip some of the worlds here and there. And that's not a glitch. That's just like by design. You can do that in the game and beat the game without having to go at all the worlds. So things like that. And then there are certain weird categories here. Like, again, I'm using Kingdom Hearts as an example because it's what I know the best. Blue can elaborate on other communities because he's got a much more variety in his speedrunning. But you know, obviously there's stuff like 100%, which would be like doing everything like Plat Trophy, get the Plat Trophy in a Kingdom Hearts game. There's Data Org, which is the super boss category, basically beat the 13 data organization fights. And then also, obviously, within these categories, especially for, again, RPGs that have difficulty settings, there's difficulty settings. So for Kingdom Hearts, there's beginner, standard, proud, critical, and critical level 1. and it depends on the game. Not all the games have all the different difficulties, and again, depending on the game, certain are faster than others. Like, I believe on Days, like, Proud is the fastest for one reason or another. I don't know much about Days. In Birth by Sleep, Crit level 1 is the fastest, and in Kingdom Hearts 2, Beginner is the fastest, but not by much. Normal critical, not level 1, is like a minute or two slower, I think. Maybe 3, but it's not that much slower. So, yeah. I guess I'll throw it to Blue now for whatever he wants to say.
Yeah, Blue, go ahead.
Yeah, like rules. It is different based on like the community, because typically what rules are just decided by the community on for the majority of the cases. Some of the more silly categories, which I guess makes it to where those silly categories exist, is because it's based on community. Like, there's a really fun category that's in Pokemon Snap, where when you complete the game and you start your cartridge up again, it unlocks a special kind of like a high score challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the categories is to go through each of the stages and beat the default high score as fast as possible. And so it creates so many unique strategies that you would never think of or never see done in a regular speed run, which is just get a picture of each Pokemon just once. Doesn't matter if it looks good, just take a picture of each Pokemon. And so in this one, you're caring about the points. So you're caring about the fastest way to get the best pictures for the most points for each of the stages. And so it creates a lot of unique things that you get to show off with the game that you normally wouldn't see. And one other really silly category is with Minish Cap, where it's the fire rod percent. So in Minish Cap, there's an incomplete item that you can use an emulator to gain access to, the fire rod. And what it does is it can change tiles in the game. And so they basically use that to complete the game as much as possible. So it's like it's just a lot of fun when you see communities kind of like take ways that you can beat the game and kind of add. It goes back to that definition of speedrunning being a self-imposed challenge, and that's really what it is. So it can be a lot of fun when you do things like that.
Are there any? Like I said, we're trying to avoid, like, we'll call it targeting of specific groups and stuff, but what is like the most frustrating rule or regulation in a community you've come across, and you're just like, why is this a thing? Why is this a rule? Or it could be, why are we talking about this? Why are we debating this rule? Both of you definitely have this experience somewhere. I can't imagine everything is perfect.
Oh no,
we're just like, oh yeah, it's all these communities are perfect. There has to be like a couple in particular, a couple rules I'm talking about, where you're just like, you're shaking your head like, why is this? Why are we talking about this?
Anytime a new like game comes out, or a new console comes out, or a new whatever comes out, like DLC for a game in a series, it, like, at least in Kingdom Hearts, it just becomes a cluster of discussion and opinions on what should be done. Should we like split the categories? Should we just have all in one place? Should we ban this? Should we ban that? Should we allow that? Like, it's honestly like nonsense most of the time on that. And there are certain also communities that I've heard, again, we're not going to point fingers here, that, for example, like, only allow you to play on harder difficulties, like normal or above, or hard or above. And they're like, they basically discount, or they'll make fun of you for running on any difficulty lower than normal. Basically, if you run on easy or very easy, or whatever it's called. For, again, in Kingdom Hearts it's beginner mode, but whatever it's called in that particular game. And to me, that's a very silly mindset. First of all, it's called a speed run, and generally if you play on a lower difficulty, the game is going to be faster. There's going to be less chance of dying. The enemies are going to have like less health and are going to be easier to kill. And it's just generally going to be easier to complete the game on a lower difficulty. So I don't know why you would restrict playing on a higher difficulty. And again, there are some cases where actually playing on a higher difficulty is faster, but even still, I don't understand why you would restrict somebody from playing on a lower difficulty, or not accept their run because it's played on a lower difficulty. So I think that's a really silly mindset. I think it's it's like gating your community, which we've seen in not just speedrunning, but in many aspects of many communities, not just games, other things as well. And it's just like, why don't you want more people to like this game and like what you're doing and join the community and have more people to talk to and like think about strategies with and try and make it faster? Like, I don't see why you would push people away because they don't want to play the game on hard mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my, like, why is that even a rule? Is that just flat out banning entire difficulty settings? There was one where I mean, I don't know if this would be silly, but in Resident Evil, there's a part where you can go in the options and change the frame rate.
Uh-huh.
And when you change the frame rate, certain glitches become possible that weren't before. And so for the longest established time, it was you either stick with one or stick with the other. And there was a runner that posted a video of their run, and what they did is they were just like, why don't we take advantage of both? So he would like go through some of the game where it's best on one frame rate, and then he would save, change the frame rate to where a glitch would help him in this chapter, use it, and then switch back. And so he would do that to make as fast of a run as possible. And that created a ton of controversy and arguments. And it went on for like, I think like a month and a half, the arguments back and forth. Some just banning the runner, some saying that banning the run.
Banning the runner.
It was such a, yeah, it was
They
crazy.
just like ban the runner. It's like, oh, well, I can't believe you did that. Just get out.
Yeah, because
Really?
he's technically breaking the rules, since the top runners, the world record culture, did not like that you could switch like that. And then another one is with oh man, I just had it in my mind. Oh yeah, when a new console comes out, and like the Wii U, when the Wii U came out, a lot of games that were on the Virtual Console were a lot faster on the Wii U than anywhere else, because the Wii U had an SSD for its native storage. So a lot of Virtual Console,
I did not know the Wii U had an SSD.
yeah, that's why it had such a low storage, because it was using SSD.
Aren't there some games that are like Tokyo Mirage Sessions is super slow on the Wii U? Like, sorry, that's a little bit off topic, but I find it hard. Like, I've heard the load times on that game, for example, are just awful on Wii U. So I don't know how it can be so slow.
Yeah,
sorry,
like
keep
Donkey Kong 64, 100% went from like, I can't remember. It went down by like 2 or 3 hours just from load times on the Wii U.
Oh man.
And yeah, Pokemon Snap was faster on the Wii U because things just loaded so much faster. Minish Cap is so fast on the Wii U digitally that it actually is faster than an emulator on the computer. Like, it loads that fast on the Wii U. And so like there was a lot of communities that would actually flat out ban the Wii U entirely, saying that it's too much of an unfair advantage for people. So they would ban an official Nintendo console from the leaderboards.
Why wouldn't you
entirely?
Oh, okay. I don't want to like go down this too far, but like, why wouldn't you just create a separate grouping or category for that particular console?
Yep.
Yeah, so like if you go like just down the list of games, like Donkey Kong 64 accepted it, it just allowed it completely because it's like it's Nintendo's console. I think Pokemon Snap separated them into not Wii U and Wii U. I forgot what it was. There was another game that just banned the Wii U entirely, saying that it costs too much to even get a Wii U, so you should buy a different console instead. So it's just like every community had its own kind of like judgment for what they did. I don't know if Pokemon Snap still has them separated, but when I was speedrunning it, that was what was voted on, was to split them. So yeah, it's just every community decided on something different. Just when you have something like actually this kind of problem goes as far back as in the early 2000s with Ocarina of Time, because the world record at the time found out that if you use the Chinese IQ, I think it's called, it actually loaded the game faster than any other version. So they actually went out and got a Chinese console to play Zelda Ocarina of Time on it and get a record on it. So that kind of is where the very beginning of these kinds of discussions for version differences came from.
Oh, interesting.
It's even as far back as that. Like, should we allow this because it's really hard to get a Chinese console?
Yeah, it's just like it's not like going out and getting a Wii U. Like, you're going out and getting an international based console that is even more difficult potentially. That I'm more understanding of. But it's like, okay, if it's the Wii U, like it's there's a price point obviously, but beyond that, it's just like just separate it. I don't feel like it's a big deal. But I'm on the outside looking in. You know, that's
so it's just another
take.
addition to like the kind of discussions and arguments that, and then of course if you tying all back to like world record culture as well, where you know a lot of the times the discussion would be weighted more heavily to who has the world record, and then so some would argue like the world record holder should have the most say since you know they're the ones that have the world record, they have the most time, the most experience, and then others would argue that that means that they have more to worry about, like because now it's their record that's kind of being threatened. So like having their weight have more, you know, like if they're not running on the Wii U, for example, and then now they have more of a voice to say, well, we should separate it or we shouldn't allow it because they have more to kind of gain from that. So it's just like it would cause all sorts of drama, arguments, debates on just kind of specific rules and what should be allowed.
It just feels weird to have. I don't want to go on this one because I think it's a dangerous topic for me that I'm thinking about it. But it's like it feels weird to me in particular to have the world record holder who's going to be biased, by the way, because of the world record holder.
Very, because they want to keep their world record.
Necessarily voting on this, it's probably better to find unbiased opinions. But again, you know, that's probably a silly thing to say as an outsider looking. But
and like tangentially, you have like different controllers, macro controllers, third-party controllers. Like what should there be a specific like universally accepted way for you know running a game? So it's just like the discussions can get as far and as wide as you know things that you never even would have thought of.
Yeah, which I think some, like I said, some of them are valid. They seem valid, but again, it's just like okay. It just feels like okay, if it's a huge deal, we have the conversation, but yeah, like banning people and throwing them out for something that they're just trying to be creative. I don't understand why you're banning people for creativity. If they're being creative, don't ban them. Just say, hey, let's talk about it. Like banning is an extreme. Like it's not a silly thing. Like if I see, it's just like, or as Star Candy said, just delete them IRL. But what I mean is like when you go to the extreme immediately, it's like, oh, you broke the rules. This is a rule breaker. But he's just doing something that's different and creative, and it's not like he's hurting anybody. This is the thing that gets me too. If I were to do the Resident Evil case, am I physically or like am I just emotionally hurting somebody when I do that? I really don't think so. Unless maybe I am. It just seems weird to just be like, oh, well, you did it this way. Oh, get out, get him out, get this person out, get him out. It's just like okay, if they did that, I have a better solution. If you disagree with it and everybody else disagrees with it, just don't count it. Just say, hey, don't do it again. Don't count it. If the person keeps trying to do it, then you can get him out. But like when your first response to something like that, I think it's strange to see a first response be, oh, this is different. Banned. Yeah. It seems weird when nobody's realistically getting hurt, I think.
People don't like change, man. They're scared. They get real scared.
Yeah, it's just, which is weird because like speedrunning is all change. I mean, like the adaptation of a run is literally change. So you should be able to respect
it's
that.
so funny. It's so funny you say that because, and I know Blue has talked about this before when he used to run Kingdom Hearts, is like, it feels like at least in some cases, like if there's a established route for a game, a lot of times if you man, well, what if we tried this? If you like propose a route change, like the off the cuff reaction of the community is like, no, that doesn't work. That's stupid. That's a terrible idea. Like, slow. Just go with what the route. Like, no, that's slow. That won't work. It's like, wait. Why don't you try it? Like, it might work. Like, the initial response is always like, nah, that won't work. Like, this is what we do. This is the best way to do it. Why would you do this new thing that could be faster? But it's probably not. It's probably not because you're stupid.
I just picture the Discord. It's like, hey, I'm really trying this route, and just getting an immediate 2-second response. Someone's typing, no, too slow, too slow.
And I think that also kind of runs back to not necessarily world record culture, but kind of like a sort of in that realm where it's like when something's established and you have some of the more high profile people kind of like doing it, or like constantly pushing that, or you have the resources, the tutorials that already have it pre-established, that just becomes like what's it's supposed to be. That's the norm. And like you don't see that kind of thing as much before streaming became super common and
Mhm.
accessible, and when people were using forums.
Mhm.
Because back in the SRL, I think it was SRL, no, speed
Speedruns
record, speed
Live?
demos live, speed
Speed-
something like that.
Something,
It was
okay.
the original place that people posted speedruns. It was like Speed Demos Archive. That's it.
Okay.
Oh,
Um,
SDA. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. So what that did is, instead of like having a leaderboard where people would just submit the runs or like posting it on YouTube, what would happen is that there would be a forum for each game, and they would kind of like talk about strategies that they found just in general, in generic form. And then there would be one guy who would step up and take all the strategies that people posted and established, and then they would do a run and they would
Mhm.
submit it and it would get posted. So you'd see a lot more like experimentation and kind of like trying to go off the beaten path then.
Mhm.
But it's like nowadays, with how common it is and how easy it is, and it just seems like people will fall into the it's been established, this has to be the best, and it can be kind of frustrating sometimes when you're trying to like experiment.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine it. I can understand, don't reinvent the wheel type of mentality,
Yeah.
but at the same time, with a lot of these games, the wheel is still being created. Sometimes, like, when I see it, I'm like, okay, game first comes out, it takes time. It does genuinely take time for the run to develop to a state where, okay, you're starting to see people hovering around the same time that are at that top area. But like, it just seems funny to me, again, with like the kinds of several people typing no, too slow. It's like, okay, but you think this wheel is created and it's working perfectly, and that's not true all the time. Your wheel is a square, and you're satisfied with your square. Maybe we can make it slightly, let's try something different and see if it rounds out a bit more. It is funny to just like conceptually like hear about that, because even in established things, like I'm going to use a sports example. Basketball for over like 50 years had this established way to play the game. And if you're not a basketball fan, I'm not going to go into the logic of why they changed it. But for like over 50 years, they had one way to play. And then within like 10 years or less than that, there was like this fundamental shift in the game that was so drastic that it completely changed how people thought of players and how to play the game on a strategic level. And it's like, okay, you've got 50 years of like, oh, well, we're going to do this. And then somebody decided, did you know that the 3-point shot is more than a 2-point shot?
It's worth one more point than a 2-point shot.
Some genius of a mathematician said, wait a minute, 3 is greater than 2. And that sparked a whole conversation. And so it's just like silly to me to think that, oh, well, the wheel's been established, let's not change it. It's like, no. You can keep going on your square wheel. I'm going to see if we can make it rounder. Because it's just like, that's just not true. That it's just like, oh, this is established route, too slow, don't do anything else. Like that's not really true all the time.
Yeah, because changing one thing changing one thing in the run can affect, based on what it is, something else in the run.
Mhm.
Like with I think in Minish Cap, we do a thing where it used for the longest time, we would farm for kinstones in a certain area, and in order to skip something else later that would save more time in the long run, we do something extra before, which would take a little bit longer than normal. And so like when you kind of like look at the route as a whole, it's shorter overall, but you're wasting a lot of time in one place, but you're saving even more in a different spot. So it's like one of the greatest skip time savers that we found was at the very start of the game, where a guy he messed up the start of the game, and when he was resetting over and over, one of the more experienced runners noticed this guy is somehow getting more money than we've ever seen possible before every time. And so at the start of the run is when money is most important, and so he's wondering like, why is this happening? And it turns out because this guy was messing up and was doing something different. We found a way to consistently get a high amount of money at the start of the game, and from then on, we didn't have to worry about it for the rest of the game.
Right.
So it's like it brings up that thing where it's like, you start with a square, a guy either messing up or somebody doing something slower in one spot. It can kind of develop into a better wheel that will, go further for the whole run itself.
Yeah,
because they find something new.
It's more efficient. You find efficiencies. Yeah. And I mean, that's totally right. So,
yeah,
speedruns
are always evolving as new people come into the community. More like, again, there's been numerous times in, I'm sure, many speedrun communities where a world record has held for quite a long time, and then maybe somebody new will come in, or somebody old will just get really motivated and start grinding hard. Maybe they'll find a new strat and implement it, and yeah, so and that's the one problem that I see actually with like tutorials, basically, is like, because if you make a tutorial like series or like video that like goes over the entire route, like if someone makes a route change or like they find something new, well, now your tutorial's outdated. You have to like remake it or change. Yeah, that's my only thing. Yeah, thanks, Dodge.
We're not super old yet. We'll get to boomer territory soon.
Not quite.
So
yeah. I completely lost my train of thought, so let's just move on.
I blame Dodge for that. I'm gonna change the topic since you lost your thoughts, because both of us are old and that happens to us. I want to talk about some major speedrunning events. There's obviously, GDQ, AGDQ, SGDQ, but there's Zeldathon. There's got to be one for like Mega Man, I imagine.
Yes, there's ESA, as Blue said.
Yep.
That's the European one. Mm-hmm. Yep. There's an Australian one. I don't remember what it's called.
There's a Japanese one. I think it's called a JRTA. I think it's called.
Yeah.
It's some online one that they do, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's the Myriathon, of course, which you're watching right now. This isn't, but it's our podcast, so stick around for that. And there's also RPG Limit Break.
Yes.
Which I really like. As I've mentioned, I really like RPG speedruns, so I actually love RPG Limit Break. But
now I want to avoid going too far into drama, because we can talk about drama a little bit with a bit of, we'll call it, care. But let's just talk about the fact that I think like GDQ is obviously is a good starting point. GDQ is like, I had no idea what it was before basically Spoon, I think, immersed me in it. He like mentioned it, and I've been to one of them. One of the only reasons I did is because it's in my home state of Minnesota. But can we like talk a bit about the growth that it's had? Like I said, I don't want to like go too far into drama, but maybe we can touch a bit about some stuff that will, that maybe raised an eyebrow. Example would be like, they're always sub-only mode now. So let's just like, I would say I'm going to open the door to it, and with caution that if we go too far, I'm going to close it.
Okay.
Blue, why don't you start? You're the scoop person.
Yeah, the scoop king.
You're the scoop king. Talk about
like
stuff.
GDQ is, it started pretty like grassroots. It's just started in a guy's basement with his few friends, and they were just speed running multiple games over like a long period of time, trying to raise money for charity. And nowadays it's like a huge event with like millions of dollars invested in it, involved with it, advertisers, sponsors, partnerships, and it's a giant event with auditoriums now. And so I think it's fantastic from a like a casual viewpoint, where GDQ I think has dramatically increased how many people know about and participate in speedruns. It's great for people who maybe be like a smaller streamer. If they do manage to represent their game in their community, they get a dramatic boost in like their visibility.
Mhm.
There's actually been a few world records that have been achieved on the stage of GDQ, strategies that have been found. But I think a lot of people kind of miss when it comes to GDQ, though, is that kind of grassroots nature of it. Now it's you have to be very clean, you have to be very professional. You don't stray too far off the beaten path.
Mhm.
They
A lot
really
of
only
commercials.
they take like a lot of the same runners you'll see year to
Yeah,
year to year or event to event to
Mhm.
event. They'll like there are certain runners who like pretty much always get a run every
right.
event that they go to at least, which is pretty much everyone. And it's very hard to get into a GDQ if you're a small streamer or you
Yeah,
don't have a if you don't have a top tier time in your game like world record or very close to world record, you are not getting into a GDQ.
yeah.
Like
And the longer the time goes on, the more apparent that problem has been. In fact, the problem got so bad that there's been a few cases of people who have faked their run for their submission just so that they got a chance to get into GDQ. So it has led to a lot of kind of issues with it, and there's also just kind of I guess like the commercial aspect of it. Some people kind of don't enjoy some of the directions they go to where they have a lot of non speedrunning content in it now.
Sure.
Like slowly, there's getting more and more of it. A lot of the donation goals, because I've been like, especially this last GDQ, I've just been absolutely astronomical in how much money you need for 3 minutes of a run, basically.
Yeah, I've noticed
yeah.
that trend is getting a little out of control.
Yeah,
Yeah, their donation goals, especially at the end of the marathon, like what was the last
I think
the,
they asked for like
yeah,
500,000
I think the
in the
the
last
last
GDQ.
bonus run in the last GDQ, AGDQ 2020, I believe it was $500,000 to unlock the last bonus run, which I think was the new Link's Awakening, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think so.
Link,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they announced it like with only a few hours left of the run as well, of the event itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a question from Dodgeman27 in the chat. Do you think the fastest runner has to be the runner for a game? I don't think so. I think that's a very silly
Yeah.
restriction. I think that GD like you shouldn't have a runner that is gonna. I mean, even no, I shouldn't even say that. I think GDQ like they do have world records occasionally, but GDQ to me is a showcase. It's
Yeah, it's
like
entertainment.
it's entertainment. It should be a showcase of the run and the community of the game being shown. Um,
Yeah.
and if the run is good, maybe they make some mistakes here and there. If the I think commentary is very important in
Mhm.
GDQ runs. Like if you have a runner who's a good commentator, or maybe just a and there are some runners who don't like to commentate. They'll just leave it to
Mhm.
Mhm.
their commentators. But if the commentary is good, it really helps. Especially again in RPGs, where if they explain all the mechanics and like the menus and like why they're equipping certain things and or unequipping certain things, why they're setting their party AI to the set tactics that they set them to, etc., etc. I really appreciate that in GDQ runs. And as I said, I do kind of get sick of seeing the same people over and over and over and over again on GDQ. I'm like, look, I like these runners get in every time because they're good, and I'm not saying they're not good. Like
Yeah.
most of these runners that get in every time are fantastic runners. They're good commentators. Their runs, for the most part, are excellent. But I would just like to see someone else get a chance.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, it's slowly getting away from that. It was the speedrunning community coming together for a good cause, and the community is more than just a few people.
Right.
And so that's kind of why I think a lot of people are kind of, at least it seems like the general audience is still receiving GDQ a lot better, but the speedrunning community themselves kind of feel like they made this event what it is, and they're kind of
yeah,
taking the back seat to their
they,
own
Sure.
event.
Sure.
Because like,
GDQ has, if I were to put it into one word, GDQ has become very corporate.
yeah, very
Like,
So
commercial.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate on that note. The
Mhm.
natural progression for a lot of these things is that when you
Yeah,
when you start out, you want to be a organic, friend, like you want to be a friendly community, because that's like the way, that's just the natural progression of growth. But eventually, what ends up happening is you you sort of become a system of your own growth, and you have to do certain things more with more of a system, and processes come up, and you start to realize, oh, we can't just have like 2 people doing this in a basement. Now we need X number of people that they have now doing like crunching the numbers, you're doing accounting now. You're going and talking to sponsors because you're trying to pay for the runners coming in and traveling and staying at the hotel. That's the natural progression of things. So I don't blame anybody for that, because they have to cover not just their own costs, but what they also have to be is they have to continue to be entertaining. So I think what ends up happening is a lot of these same runners coming back, I think it's not even just because they're great, is because, like we sort of talked about before, when you get to a certain size, reinventing the wheel becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
And you start to realize, if I reinvent the wheel, when it breaks, more people are upset, because you're no longer a small cart on the trail. You're now a convoy of different carriages, and when one of that wheels breaks on the convoy, the entire convoy has to stop. They start to become upset. So this is like, I'm saying my point is that I understand why they've become more, as you put it, corporate, and I understand the negative connotations that can come with that. And I'm not saying like I agree with every decision they make, far from it, but we have to understand as well that what the consequences, good and bad, of what comes with just like massive popularity. Like, it's one of the most popular channels. It is the most popular channel on Twitch, basically, when it's on live. It really is. So that being said, there are definitely questionable choices. For me as a viewer, I apologize for saying this. I don't want to go too far when I say this. Your little skits, sometimes they're very cute, and I think they're pretty funny. Other times, I turn off the stream.
Yeah.
Because
they are obnoxious. They're obnoxious sometimes.
There are times I'm just like, I get you guys are trying to do this skit because it covers up 5 minutes, but maybe go back to the drawing board on this one. Don't do it again. I will say, the one thing I did like was the like teaching somebody a speed run on the stage. They did that one time. It was a really short run. That was a really great segment that they did. I liked it a lot, personally speaking. The one I didn't necessarily catch on board with was when they added the little Twitch extension. Like, it was funny and it was fun for the community, for like the chat and everything. Like, but it kind of became obnoxious when you're like, okay, I kind of want to see this runner finish the game, but chat, you're kind of screwing him over. I get it. It's funny. There are like certain things I like and some things I don't like. I mean, like, there's certain things that they tried that I appreciate them trying the extension thing and putting this, like, we're going to teach this person a speed run on the stage. And that's where it all comes full circle with, like, okay, you're so big, when you try and reinvent the wheel, there's a lot of danger at playing it safe. In this case, obviously, people don't always appreciate that, and I get it. I'm with you guys 100%. Like, seeing the same people over and over again can get a bit stale. I would like to see a bit more variety, of course, but at the same time, I respect safety in that we have to be careful. People have to be careful sometimes when sponsors come in and somebody they bring in starts dropping F-bombs because they're a new person.
I think something that could help with that is like they still do the same submission process since the beginning.
Sure.
So I think maybe if they started implementing a few, I guess, like vetting ways to make sure that the runner that they're bringing is someone that understands the what needs to be taken. So maybe have them do a new run to submit, not just like their world record or their PB submission, but like one of them actually sitting there and they're doing a run of the game just right there, and they're commentating on it on top of it, or having the people they want on their couch commentating with them. Like, kind of have a new like vetting process, so that way they don't have to keep relying on the same safe runners. Like, yeah, you still want to bring the big names that, you know, they're very charismatic, like TGH has been in almost every single event.
Or like Kizaron always gets a Pokemon run. And again, I love Kizaron. I think he's hilarious. He's a great runner. Like, nothing. I'm not trying to throw shade at Keys at all. I think he's great. He's super charismatic. He's a great commentator. He's funny. His runs are good. But again, I just like to see someone new here and there.
Yeah. A lot of and like the Mexican runner, absolutely charismatic. Everyone loves watching his runs. He gets the crowd involved. He does incredible stuff. And so like having some of the the common names that you see, but definitely getting some of the newer runners that might bring something new, have their own ways. Cause like another thing that people will not think about when it comes to marathons is marathon strategies that they use for the speed runs, where they won't use the best stuff because it's typically the most dangerous. So being able to make it look natural when they do a strategy that's safer, not as fast, but still looks cool, that itself is something that not a lot of people think about or even notice because that's the idea is you don't notice it. So, like for example, somebody maybe finding a way to get a ferry, or somebody being in like a Zelda for a backup, or getting an item that will help restore their life, or like Mega Man doing having a spike shield in Mega Man Zero, where instead of dying instantly, you survive with 1 HP. So like somebody who can implement safer strategies that aren't like a 1 in 60 chance window of opportunity, someone that can do that kind of thing naturally. So just little things like that I think could make the event still represent speedrunning, but bring in somebody, still be a part of that community itself.
The other thing I'll mention about GDQ, and this kind of goes back to the difficulty discussion that we had, they almost most of the time, I'll say, pretty much take like if someone, for example, were to submit Kingdom Hearts critical and beginner, they would 100% take critical over beginner. There's definitely a, I guess, stigma with it. It's like, oh, it's critical mode, it's more challenging, it's a more interesting run, etc., etc. Like they've shown Cage to critical like a couple of different times. They've never shown Cage to beginner at a GDQ, at least since it's been popular.
Yeah.
Cage 1 they've had a couple of times. Again, they did Proud once. They may have done beginner for Cage 1. I don't remember. Mist did a run, and I don't remember if it was level 1 or if it was Proud or if it was beginner. I honestly don't remember. But generally, at least for Kingdom Hearts, like Cage 3, they did beginner, but honestly, like the rest of the difficulties for Cage 3 are terrible. So, like, yeah. There's a stigma on difficulties as well, and if it's not like them taking the hardest difficulty, there's like they're like gonna play on
incentive.
Yeah, there's gonna be an incentive for the hardest difficulty.
Sure.
It's like, all right, we're gonna have beginner, and then there'll be an incentive for critical. So it's like, again.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't disagree. I'm just simply stating as well, like it is a show now, so it's like TV. You gotta boost the ratings because ratings bring
and they're there to raise money for charity. And again, with the runners, they bring in like constantly. They're a known quantity. They know they're good runners. They know that people like them, and they know that those runners get like good donation amount. I assume when they're on. Yeah. Okay. Dodge confirming it was Proud and Proud level 1, not beginner mode. So yeah.
Not to take away from the topic as a whole, but are there any, like you talked about RPG Limit Break? Any others that you want to talk about a little bit, you guys? Just I don't want to like focus entirely on GDQ, to be honest, because we could talk about that for a long time, frankly. Are there any others that like you like for different reasons or you appreciate more? Because some of those other ones I feel like have the better opportunity to bring in some new people and get not just exposure but opportunity. Go ahead, Blue.
A lot of people have been kind of pointing at, with the frustrations that some people have with GDQ, pointing to other events. Like ESA has definitely so much bigger than it's ever been before, which is the European version of GDQ, you could say. I have kind of been appreciating a lot of the non-speedrun marathons that started to kind of reach out to speedrun communities. Like there was a charity stream, I think it's called the Rupeethon, who actually reached out to the Minish Cap community one time, because when they would do a marathon for all the Zelda games, Minish Cap would typically be their lowest viewed. And so they brought in some like speedrunners to kind of like chat, kind of help them out about it, talk to them about it, and kind of make it more interesting, learn about some of the routing, some of the strats, I guess the Myriathon kind of did that once with me too, where they were doing a blind race of Minish Cap, and they invited some of the Minish Cap community to kind of come on board and kind of commentate, help out if they get stuck, so that they because they have a time limit. They got to wait for time. So if they get stuck, refer to the speedrunners. So like some marathons like that are really cool. I do love the themed ones like RPG Limit Break, who have a specific theme. Mega Man ones. So like just finding something that kind of goes beyond just a big marathon of everything. Some of the focused ones can be a lot of fun when you're looking for a specific thing.
Boone, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Blue's saying. As I said, I really like RPG Limit Break. Again, that's mostly just because I like RPGs and I like RPG speedruns and I like seeing games that I like being done fast. But I like the thing they have going. They're getting bigger and bigger, but they're definitely nowhere near GDQ at this point. And RPG Limit Break gives time for games that like will almost never get into a GDQ, like some of these more obscure and like longer RPGs. Like GDQ usually will have like one like of the PS1 or maybe PS2 Final Fantasy games that is like a super long run, but otherwise like, you'll see these RPGs like Golden Sun as an example. Like the run's not it's like 4 hours. But like I can't see that ever being in a GDQ. Like it's an RPG, it's kind of a slow run. You can't skip cutscenes, it's a GBA game. And yeah, I just think it gives more spotlight to these kinds of runs, and they always hit the big series as well. Like they'll always have a Final Fantasy run or a couple Final Fantasy runs in there. There's every RPG Limit Break I've seen has a Kingdom Hearts run, because Kingdom Hearts is a very like in the RPG community, it's a very well known series, very well liked series. Um, and again, for Kingdom Hearts, they've done a variety. They've done KH, I believe they've done KH2 beginner, they've done KH1 beginner, they've done they've done crit and level 1, and they've done more variety on the categories for Kingdom Hearts, which again I enjoy, as opposed to just like, all right, we're only going to take critical or critical level 1. So yeah, I like that, and yeah, again, it just gives more spotlight on RPGs that will just like they're just not gonna find space for them in other marathons.
Sure.
I don't know if they still do it these days, but back like at least like 2 or 3 years ago, when Twitch teams were still like fresh, I know a lot of speedrunners would make Twitch teams, and they would make their own marathons, online speedrun marathons, where they could highlight like their favorite speedruns that they like to do that you would never see in like a big marathon. So like
Yeah.
people that run like really bad games or obscure games, it would just be a marathon of just the Twitch team that they would kind of advertise on like Reddit and stuff. And you get a couple hundred people watching, but they would get to show off a really obscure game you'd never see at these like big marathons. So like those I always kind of appreciated as well.
Another example that will actually level that I hadn't thought of before, that I just thought of, is the Tales of community has never had a run at a GDQ, and they haven't been in every RPG Limit Break, but like most of them have had one Tales run. And those, like, honestly, I don't super love Tales as a speed run. Like, most of the ones I've watched I haven't found like super interesting, but I do love the series, and it's cool. Cool to see them speed run. I mean, Symphonia Star Candy is rough because you can't skip cutscenes. That runs like 7 hours or something like that. So I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard there was some sort of like disagreement or like stigma with between GDQ and like the Tails community, and like that's the reason that there's never been a Tails run in a GDQ. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I feel like I heard that at some point. But like Tales is like, it's not a Square Enix series, a JRPG series, so it's not like super mainstream. But Tales has its following. Like I feel like, yeah, like it's not like Tales is not obscure in my opinion. Like it's not an obscure series. Like people who know about games and like JRPGs probably have heard of Tales at some point. So yeah, that's one thing that it's like it's never been in a GDQ, and
Mhm.
the RPG Limit Break channel, like the Tales community puts on a Tales of Marathon every once a year. It's usually in like February or something, on the RPG Limit Break channel. So like that the channel hosts it and they put it together.
Oh,
And
okay.
then usually there's a Tales run like at the actual event for RPG Limit Break, which is usually in May. It's obviously not happening this year because of the current situation, but I think
Sure.
they pushed it back to like September or something like that. I don't
Mhm.
remember. Um,
Okay. So we actually kind of ran through our agenda. So I want to kind of tail things off here. Um, but I do want to pose this. Is there anything we didn't touch on that either of you feel we should be mentioning or we should like talk briefly about? Um, just anything involving the topic. We didn't actually really talk about various different races and like different events like people put together. We didn't really talk about like randomizer type of speedruns and races.
There was a channel that greatly grew in popularity the last 2 years. It was I forgot. I don't know if the channel is just straight up called Speedrunning,
Mm-hmm.
but it's basically there's these it's this channel that would basically host a lot of these community made events. That it's actually where the Minish Cap tournament first happened,
Mm-hmm.
and so they would be the ones that would actually willingly, if a speedrun community was like, hey, we want to host an event, but none of us are really well known enough to make this work, would you guys be willing to host it? And so these guys would actually schedule in a lot of these events. Like it could be a tournament between like the Zelda 2 randomizers, Zelda 1 randomizers, or just speedrunning tournaments with Minish Cap,
Mm-hmm.
Mario 64 tournaments, Ocarina of Time races, Metroid races. So they would actually be this hub where you could approach them, and you could talk to them and they'll set it up for you. They have all these tools and stuff for making this entertaining, look good, smooth, good bit rate, good internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll actually have you remote into their tools, and they would host it and make everything look nice. And they would work with the community to make it look just what they want.
Yeah.
Like when we approached them, they came to us like, okay, what layouts do you think you want to do? How do you want this format to be? And so if it wasn't for them, the tournament wouldn't have been as big as it was. Let me see if I can find it with, well,
So I
Sven
do
might have some
I do want to
thoughts.
add something on. Do they just do this all for free for you?
Yeah, they just
Okay.
do it for free just because they love the community. It's as what's his name? Feasel.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the big people behind it, and he's always at the GDQ events. He's actually one of the people who was hosting during those skits.
Hmm.
And so he's always looking out for the community. He has such a passion for speedrunning. And so yeah, he actually approached us when we were thinking of the Minish Cap tournament. He's like, yeah, I'd be willing to help you host this, and make a big event out of it. And they have a YouTube channel that they
Mm-hmm.
upload all the replays. So like it's amazing just seeing some of these like events that some of the speedrunning people can do. It's not necessarily like a big marathon or anything, but just all these different events that they would set up and are completely willing to help.
I mean that's like again, I think that's just like that's a good thing obviously for the communities. I will say like I'm genuinely surprised. They're just like, oh yeah, we'll just do this for free for you. Because like for something like that, if somebody helps me put it together, I'd give them something. I just feel like I'm the type of person who's like, oh, you're doing so much work. Can I give you anything? Can I just give you anything, please?
Yeah, like Speed Gaming is the channel name, and they've
Okay.
gotten so big since then, 2 years ago, that they have 4 channels now, so they can have 4 events going at once,
That's
so
very
that they
cool.
don't have to worry about, yeah, like we have our schedule filled up. No, they have 4 channels now.
That's really cool.
And if you're the one that came to them and kind of presented the idea, they'll make you a moderator for that event, so that way you can keep
Yeah.
the community that you want, keep the atmosphere that you want. Like they basically are almost like an auditorium that you can go up to them and ask like, hey, can this work?
Sure.
And so like all they ask is just help, spread the name, spread the word. And now like the smallest event, they can get a couple hundred people watching, and it's really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, like those are good. Like I said, those are good things. Those are good things to have, like a group of people willing to set aside their time to do that and do it like well. It's one thing to just like do it, but do it well is undervalued in my opinion. A lot of different communities, not just like speedrunning, but there's so many different like communities involving like various different more competitive games. We'll say not esports specifically, but like I've dealt with various different card game groups that are like, we want to do a tournament too, and they'll do it and just don't do it service, and you're just like, okay. You have to appreciate the people that are willing to put their time aside and do justice to what you want them to accomplish. And it's just like there's a lot of value in that, in my opinion, for these things, because it just like doesn't always happen, and it does get frustrating when it doesn't happen. As somebody who's dealt with that on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So, Spoon, anything else you want to add into this? Otherwise, I'm gonna round things out.
I think we've touched most of it. I guess I'll just wrap by saying I think, kind of based on the discussion we had earlier, that I think it's good if communities are just more inclusive, generally. Try and find a way to help people get into it. Again, like tutorials and things have been becoming more popular lately, which is really nice. But a lot of these debates and discussions, especially around leaderboards that happen, can get really divisive and toxic sometimes, like we talked about. Like Blue mentioned about the was it the Resident Evil community with the frame rate changing or whatever. It's I just think that, like, in a case like that, here's what I would do. Like, obviously that was like a new thing that a lot of people didn't agree with, but any percent is any percent. It means beat the game as fast as possible using any means necessary. So if a new glitch or a new method is found, that should be allowed in that category. If you want to make a new category that says like, hey, this glitch is banned or this particular method is banned, well, that should be a separate category. And again, there's been plenty of these discussions. Like in the Kingdom Hearts community, there was a huge debate with Kingdom Hearts 3 about, the different models of the PS4. Like there's base, there's slim, and there's pro. And then you can add I guess you can swap out your hard drive for an SSD, a solid state drive, which makes it a lot faster. So there was a huge debate in the Kingdom Hearts community about this. Ended up ultimately settling on just using the in-game time because that turned out to be relatively accurate after the game came out. But this debate went like before the game came out, so before we knew that was going to be a real thing. But even when the in-game timer became sort of like the agreed, there was still like a lot of people who didn't like the in-game timer because they're like, I don't know why. They just didn't know if it was reliable, or they were just like, oh no, we've always done it this way. We've always done like real-time RTA, real-time attack. So why would we use the in-game timer in this one? Like in the previous KH games, you might be able to use the in-game timer as well. The problem is like in KH2, there's like a 20-minute cutscene that you can't skip after like you beat the game until you can get to the timer. So, and I guess we don't know exactly what that time is and how that affects it, so we don't use it. But anyways, I just wish people could. Obviously, there's always going to be disagreements, but I think in speedrunning, the best thing to do, honestly, if there's a big disagreement on something like this, is just like we can just split the categories and then do it that way.
Sure.
There's also this thing on speedrun.com, by the way. It's called filters. I feel like a lot of people don't know about it or like don't like to use it. It's like you can compare, like if you have a variable for like console, for example, like PS4 Pro, Slim, and then SSD, like you can just compare against like all other people who have SSD or all other people who have Pro or whatever it is without actually splitting the categories. So I don't know. I just like, and again, I think it all stems from like the competitive nature of it. People always think they want to get the best time that they possibly can, and I don't necessarily think it's all world record culture, but I think it's partially world record culture of people thinking like, oh man, I could get world record if only the rules were fair, like, my console wasn't slower than XYZ or whatever. It's like, I mean, I guess, but to me, in the end of the day, it's a hobby and it doesn't matter much. Again, some people are much more competitive than me. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of rambling right now. The one other thing that I'll say, and this has been an issue in a couple of situations that I've seen, is that when like rules are made on the leaderboards, those like need to be followed, like the start and end time and whatever the other rules are. I've seen a couple situations, maybe it was just a mistake by the moderator, but like a prevalent runner in the community would like submit a run, but they didn't follow the rules, and then it would get accepted, and it just turned into a big kind of drama. And for me, I'm like, if the rules are explicitly stated and you don't follow them, your run should be rejected. I'm sorry, like you didn't follow the rules, like you broke one of the rules. That's like, again, you didn't start your timer at X, you didn't end your timer at Y, or you broke whatever the other rules are. So I've seen that spiral out of control in a couple of situations where it's like, I mean, I get it that you're a popular runner, and the mod probably accepted the run because again, they're a well-known runner, and generally they play by the rules. But again, for me, that's very clear cut. It's like if you don't follow the rules, your run shouldn't be accepted. I'm sorry, I don't care if it was world record or a PB or whatever it was. So again, that's me.
Yep.
I guess I have one more thought, and then I can
No,
state
go
my
ahead.
piece.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like we've talked a lot about like the big events, the marathons, the communities, the like some of the conflicts, but like I guess like in the end, when it comes to like speedrunning with me, is that like I would say 90% of like speedrunning overall doesn't even like kind of involve themselves with a lot of that. Like to me, like most of the circle that I've met has been almost through entirely speedrunning. Like I've met both of you through speedrunning. I've met a lot of my friends through people that I've met through speedrunning as well. The communities, the networks, the connections, and so it's like a lot of people that I can meet. Like they just enjoy racing a game together. They just have a lot of fun, experiencing their game in a new light, or like even people who don't even involve themselves with speedrunning, and that I've become friends with, they just become fascinated in seeing like things that they've never seen from their favorite game before, or just like even when you see like you look up strategies for enemies just casually, like you're stuck on a boss. Sometimes it's a speedrunner who posts the strategy that they've posted, and that involves them in some way. So it's like speedrunning just has so much of like facets to it, and just so wide reaching that it's kind of amazing how like a small hobby, like a sub hobby even inside gaming, can just reach so many facets and reach so many people without even realizing it. So it's so when we talk about a lot of like drama and stuff, like I guess like it's important to remember like how much of it is just really positive in the end, where you're just enjoying a video game with friends, you're competing, a safe competition. And I'm really glad that I got into speedrunning, and when I did, it's been really, really good for me.
Yeah, I think like that's the right wholesome approach. I think it works way too many or just for anything.
Same. I'll echo what you guys are saying there. Like this podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for speedrunning. Like Otto and I met in college, so we would have known each other, but Abandon, who is the one who created the Myriathon, and Dodge and Blue, I met all of these people through Twitch and speedrunning. So this podcast would not exist if it weren't for Twitch and speedrunning. So it's an amazing hobby. It brings a lot of people together. It raises a lot of money for charity and just almost $400,000 just the other day for COVID-19 direct relief. So again, there's so many people in it. There's bound to be differences of opinion and drama, but it is a really great hobby.
That's true. So I'm going to round this out here with some conclusion remarks. There's one thing that speedrunning doesn't have yet, and I'm going to make a prediction. I believe within the next couple of years, some soul or group is going to latch onto it, you're probably going to start seeing, it probably already exists somewhere. You might start seeing cash prize tournaments.
I'm surprised that doesn't exist yet. I'm surprised there's not an esports scene yet, or at least
I think that's my prediction. I think it's going to happen within a couple of years. Somebody's going to like have this brilliant idea and just go, why don't we just like do a $20 thing and see what happens? Somebody's going to do it. And then it's going to actually, like, in a specifically popular game, obviously, with a bunch of people that run it. And they're going to, I think, like, eventually it'll start to catch on. And then it'll become like almost the Olympics. It'll turn to the Olympics.
Could you count that that Nintendo tournament for like when Mario Maker was announced, how it was a race? Could you count that as one of those almost? Where it was when Mario Maker was announced and they did like all these, whoever could complete these stages made that they created the fastest.
Yeah.
Was it the Nintendo World Tournament, I think it was?
Yeah, you do that. I mean, something like that. And somebody's going to basically make a pseudo Olympics with it. I think that's like the right way to do it. You don't just do like one event. You do like a relay where you have like 3 people on a team and then they do 3, whatever. Something like that. I don't know. But anyway, that's my prediction. Couple years, somebody's going to figure it out. Light bulb's going to turn on. Somebody's going to do it. That's just my like prediction. And I'm pretty decent at predictions with some of this stuff. So let's round this out. Let's conclude on this. For the people watching, thank you for watching. Obviously, we really appreciate everybody who interacts with us, obviously live, but outside of that, various different social media channels, Discord, whatever it is. We appreciate the people that follow us and make this feel like a really amazing, podcast. Spoon and I started this like almost a month and a half ago now, almost 2 months ago, and I think I can confidently say like we're both very happy with the results so far. We're happy that we've had people like Blue come on and Dodge obviously last week come on and talk to us. And some other stuff I want to talk about quickly before I let all of us sell out a bit is, we really appreciate people giving feedback on these kinds of things. If you're listening or watching, Blue, for example, has given us feedback and it's been really helpful. You probably barely noticed that I put background music on this. That was something that we're trying. We try lots of different things just to see if it helps with the experience. So if you have feedback, please let us, either Spoon or I, know whether it's here while you're watching or Discord or such. And on that note, you can follow all of us on various different social channels. I said this at the beginning. My Twitter is at automaton89. So just the name that you see plus 89 at the end. I like my bender too. That's great feedback, Star Candy. I will implement that feedback immediately and maybe put it a little bit closer and blow it up a little bit. That's my Twitter. All the Myriathon stuff usually goes on there. I would say like 95% of it's going on my Twitter. For when what the topic's going to be, we always announce that on Fridays. I put some polls on there just to see if we can get some fun like interaction with people, and just like when the podcast will start as well. I do sometimes stream on Twitch. I don't do it as much anymore, but I like to stream Heroes, and I might stream some other stuff. And Spoon, why don't you go ahead and sell yourself out a bit here?
Sure. Real quick, I'll just echo what Otto has been saying. If you are watching right now on Twitch or Mixer or later on YouTube, please follow or subscribe to the channel if you like it. On YouTube, please leave a comment if you have a comment, or even if you don't have a comment, just say, hey guys, I'm here, I like this, I don't know, like, dislike, do all that stuff. It helps us, as Otto mentioned earlier. If we can get those numbers up on YouTube, we can get an actual I don't know what you said it's
you get
called.
A custom URL.
Yeah,
and I
custom URL.
Can't stress enough that that's so important. And I'll talk about them more at the very end when I round out the.
Yeah. So please, again, if you're watching and you like it, subscribed, please do that for us. We'd really appreciate it. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm SP Teaspoon. I'm SPT Twitch.tv/SP Teaspoon, and also at SP Teaspoon on Twitter. I used to do speedruns of KH2. I haven't done that in a while. I may get back to it once I'm on summer break for a bit. But right now, I am playing Persona 5 Royal on my personal Twitch channel. If you're interested in watching that or other JRPGs, I mostly play JRPGs because that's pretty much my favorite genre of game. So, yep, check me out. Follow me on Twitter. I don't post a lot on Twitter, but I will here and there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Glad you guys watched. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it.
Blue, sell yourself out real quick.
You can mostly find me on Discord and Twitch. I've started kind of renovating my Twitch, trying to get back into speedrunning because I took a break for a while. And so I mostly do like gacha games, and I'm going to be picking up speedrunning again, probably relearn a lot of the new stuff in Minish Cap. So you can catch me on Twitch at BlueInfinity22 and Discord BlueInfinity #2200 if you have any questions or like need any advice on getting into speedrunning.
Yeah, I think Blue's a good person for a lot of those things. He's got a vibrant community, I'm going to say. Vibrant community in Discord. Vibrant is the term I'm using, and I'm not saying anymore. To round out this, please follow the Twitch, or like I said, we're on Mixer too, if that's your channel of choice. Please follow the Twitch if you are at all interested or intrigued, or don't, whatever. Like I said with the YouTube, it's really important to get that custom domain name. Like, again, it's a 100 subscriber limit, and I realize that that's like, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty small, but the custom domain name is really important because it's much easier to type the Myriathon in a domain than it is 456E4 capital R 37 LK, a bunch of string words.
XYZ.
Yeah, it's a string. It's an easier string. And if you're a coding type of person like me, you can understand this. Like, it's an easier string to say the Myriathon than it is a bunch of garbage, random characters. So it is really important, and I think like 100 subscribers is a goal that we would love to have. I think as a baseline. So if you're interested at all or just want to support us, please go ahead and do that there, or don't, whatever. You
just
can
click subscribe. Like, it doesn't, like, seriously, like, what's the harm? Just click subscribe. You can turn notifications off if you don't care about that. We don't. I mean, it's on YouTube. We gotta say ring the bell, but honestly, I don't care. Don't ring the bell. I don't care. Just click the darn subscribe button.
Yeah, we'd appreciate it. Really, we would. You can also, like, comments are always helpful. Likes or dislikes. You can comment about the Bender picture. Comment about the picture I used for Blue and how it's in poor resolution. Say it. It's okay. I don't mind.
GDQ.
Yeah, that's him in GDQ. Say something about it. Whatever. We don't care, as long as it's appropriate. And yeah, just like be sure to support us would be great. That's really helpful. And I think that's going to about do it for the episode. There really isn't much else I think to talk about other than obviously Anchor. I forgot about Anchor. If you like to listen to the podcasts, please support us on Anchor and Spotify and iTunes and all those other places. So yeah, that's gonna about do it. Thank you all for watching, listening, supporting us. We're not sure what the topic's going to be next week, but if you'd like to know, we told you all of our socials, so you'll see it there. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your evening or morning wherever you are in the world. Bye. Spoon, say bye.
Everybody. Night, everybody.
Blue, say goodbye. There you go.
Thanks for watching.
About to say.